Bonjour Français 3. Aujourd'hui, on va étudier la leçon 15 where we will learn le verbe connaître and the object pronouns, les pronoms objets, le, la and les. Here are the learning targets. Voici les cibles d'apprentissage de la leçon 15. I can use the verb connaître to say what I or others are familiar with. I can communicate about and with friends and acquaintances by using object pronouns. I can refer to people who are not around or things using le, la, and les. D'accord. So right away, we will start with the grammar elements, which is the verb connaître. And actually, it's grammar and vocab because we have to learn that the verb connaître means to know. And we will have to learn the conjugation. So note the form of the irregular verb connaître. It's an irregular verb. It means it is not a regular RE verb. In the infinitive, it's connaître. It takes the accent circumflex in the infinitive form. And in the present tense, you conjugate it like this. So fill in the lesson notes and pause and repeat after me. So you are doing two things. You are filling in the blanks and you are practicing the pronunciation and the memorization. Je connais. Tu connais. Il, elle, on connaît. Nous connaissons. Vous connaissez. Ils, elles connaissent. So the ENT in connaissent is silent. I'm going to go over more elements for the conjugation. So je connais ends with S. Tu connais ends with S. And for je, tu, nous, and vous, form of the conjugation in the present tense, connaître does not take the accent circumflex on the I. But il, elle, on, and il and elle in the plural forms take an accent circumflex on the I. Pardon, it's just for il, elle, on in the singular, not for the plural. So, one more time, I'm gonna give you sentences and translate them, the examples, let's go over them. Je connais Philippe, I know Philip. Tu connais sa sœur, you know his sister. Il, elle, on connaît les voisins, he knows the neighbors. We, informal, know the neighbors. Nous connaissons Québec. We know Québec. Vous connaissez cet hôtel. You know this hotel. Il et elle, they connaissent ce café. They know this café. And in the passé composé, it's conjugated with avoir, and the past participle is connu. Connu. Okay? It sounds like j'ai connu. Tu as connu. Il a connu. Nous avons connu. Vous avez connu. Ils ont connu. And in this sentence, j'ai connu Paul l'été dernier means I've known or I met Paul l'été dernier. Connaître means to know in the sense of to be acquainted or familiar with. To be acquainted or familiar with. It is used primarily with people and places. In the passé composé, connaître means to meet for the first time. So here, j'ai connu Paul l'été dernier means I met him for the first time. I met Paul last summer. Où as-tu connu François? Where did you meet or where have you met François? Note also the expression faire la connaissance de. Faire la connaissance de means to meet or to get to know. Literally, faire means to do, right? To do the acquaintance of or to meet or to get to know. Here's an example. Où as-tu fait la connaissance de François? Where have you met François? The verb reconnaître is conjugated like connaître. So, connaître means to know, to be acquainted with, to be familiar with, or to have met someone for the first time. But reconnaître means to recognize. Je n'ai pas reconnu ta cousine. I did not recognize your cousin. Let's look at this dialogue and see the application of the verb connaître. Tu connais mon cousin Patrick? Do you know my cousin Patrick? Non, je ne le connais pas. No, I don't know him. Mais j'aimerais bien le connaître, but I would love to meet him. Regarde ce drôle de type. Tu le connais? look at this strange fellow. Do you know him? Mais c'est mon cousin Patrick. But it's my cousin Patrick. Ah bon? Oh, well. Okay, so now in slide 5, la diapositive 5, we will go over les pronoms compléments, le, la, les. In the previous lesson, we learned about the object pronouns me, te, nous, and vous. In this lesson, we will learn about the object pronouns or les compléments, le, la, les. In each of the questions below, the noun in heavy type comes directly after the verb, like this. Tu connais Patrick? It is the direct object of the verb. How do we know it's the direct object? The direct object answers the question, what or who? It is the person or thing that the action is done to, right? Tu connais Patrick means, do you know Patrick? The act of knowing applies to Patrick, while tu is the subject, connais is a verb, Patrick is the direct object, okay? Oui, je le connais. So to shorten the sentence, we replace Patrick, which is a masculine singular noun, with le. And where do we place it? We move it from after the verb to right here before the verb, and the sentence will look like oui, je le connais. And literally it means, yes, I know him. Tu connais Patrick? Do you know Patrick? Yes, I know him. Oui, je le connais. Tu vois souvent Anne? Anne is a feminine singular noun, so we replace it with la. Tu vois souvent Anne, and why do we do this? To avoid repetition and sometimes to shorten the sentence. Tu vois souvent Anne? Do you see Anne often? Oui, je la vois souvent. So we have to identify and locate the verb and place the direct pronoun in front of it, or pronom complément. Yes, I see her often. Tu connais mes copains? Do you know my friends? Yes, I know them well. So them would be les in this case because mes copains is plural. The plural noun, when it's an object, is replaced by the pronoun les, and it's placed before the verb. Oui, je les connais bien. Yes, I know them well. Same thing here. Tu invites tes copains? Oui, je les invite. Tes copains is replaced with les, which is the object pronoun, and it's placed before the verb instead of after the verb. Okay? So, direct object pronouns have the following forms. For masculine singular, le or el apostrophe, and they mean him or it. For feminine singular nouns or objects, they are la and el apostrophe, which mean her and it. In the plural form, for both masculine and feminine, the direct object pronoun is les. Je le connais, I know him. Je l'aime, I love him or her. Here we don't know because it could have been la or le. Je les invite, I invite them. The number of the pronoun, which is a plural, right? It's recognizable by the pronunciation because invite starts with an I. So we have to do the liaison between les and then invite. Je les invite. So the z sound you hear, which is the liaison, shows us that les is plural. Je la connais, I know her. Je l'aime, I know her. Okay, so here, je l'aime means on the top line, the first line is I love him. Je l'aime, the second one is I love her. Je les invite means I invite them for the plural feminine. Note that le and la both become L apostrophe before a vowel sound like so. The direct object pronouns le, la, L apostrophe, and les can refer to both people and things. Tu vois Hélène? Do you see Hélène? Oui, je la vois. Yes, I see her. Tu vois cette affiche? Do you see this poster? Oui, je la vois. Yes, I see it in the feminine. Yes, I see it. So, and notice that it does not translate in French. There is no equivalent to it. It could be either la or le. because all the nouns in French are either feminine or masculine. The position. So where do we place these object pronouns? In general, the object pronouns le, la, l'apostrophe, and les come before the verb, just like me, te, nous, and vous. Qui connaît Eric? Who knows Eric? Je le connais for affirmative. Je le connais here before the verb. And for the negative, je ne le connais pas. So still le is before the verb, but it's preceded by ne, and both le and the verb precede the pas. So ne pas and are around le connais. In affirmative commands, the pronouns come after the verb and are connected to it by a hyphen, just like what we learned in the previous lesson for me, te, nous, and vous in the imperative form. We drop the subject pronoun and we use le, la, and les after the verb with a hyphen in the affirmative form, like this. But in the negative form, we place them before the verb without a hyphen, but still no subject pronoun because it's a command form. Let's look at these examples. J'invite Sylvie. Should I invite Sylvie? Oui, invite-la. Yes, invite her, invite her. Invite-la. So Sylvie is replaced with la, and it's placed after the verb, preceded by a hyphen. Now for the negative form, we move this la in front of invite, and we drop the a, we replace it with apostrophe, and it looks like this. No, ne l'invite pas. No, do not invite her. J'achète les billets. Should I buy the tickets? Oui, achète hyphen les. Buy them. So les billets is replaced by les. And les is placed after the verb, after the hyphen. But in the negative form, it goes back to before the verb. No, ne les achète pas. Do not buy them. In infinitive construction, the pronouns come before the infinitive. So remember that the infinitive construction is a sentence that has two verbs. The first one is conjugated, the second one in the infinitive. And we look for the second verb, the infinitive, and we place the pronoun before it. Like this. Qui regarde le film? Who is watching the movie? In the affirmative form, it's je vais le regarder. I will watch it, or I will it watch. I will watch it. D'accord? Je vais le regarder. So le is placed before verb 2, after verb 1. In the negative command, Marc ne va pas le regarder. Here, the order of the sentence doesn't change, but we just add ne and pas around verb 1. Marc ne veut pas le regarder. He will not watch it. So le is before verb 2. Same thing. Tu veux écouter ces CD? Do you want to listen to these CD? Je veux les écouter. I want to listen to them. Les écouter. In the negative form, je ne veux pas. I do not want. And then les, and then verb 2, which is infinitive. Je vais les écouter. Remember, infinitive means non-conjugated. The verbs attendre, chercher, écouter, and regarder take direct object pronouns in French, but not in English. So let's compare. Attendre means to wait. Chercher, to look for, to search for, or to bring. Écouter means to listen to. Regarder means to watch. In French, we say nous attendons le bus. See here, there is no preposition before the verb in French. When they say these verbs take direct objects, it means the verb is not followed by a preposition like a or de. Nous attendons le bus right away. So le bus is directly placed after the verb, and it is the direct object of the verb. While in English, you'd say, we are waiting for the bus or for it. Since le bus is a direct object of the verb, when we replace it with le or l'apostrophe, the l'apostrophe is a direct object of the verb. So, nous l'attendons. We are waiting for it, or we are waiting it. And l'apostrophe is a direct object. Same thing for chercher. Chercher means to search or to look for. Thomas cherche son sac. He is looking for his bag. Okay, in English, it's looking for, right? There's a preposition between the verb and the object. In French, there is nothing between the verb and the object. So the object is placed directly after the verb, and it's direct object. So when we replace son sac with le is the direct object of the verb. So Thomas cherche son sac, il le cherche. He is looking for it, but in French, it's a direct object. Écoutez, Béatrice écoute ses amis. She listens to her friends. Since in French, we do not have a preposition after écouter, this means ses amis is a direct object of écoute. And when we replace ses amis with les, she listens to them. Les is a direct object of this verb, écoute. Same thing, regarder. Pierre regarde Nicole. Pierre la regarde. Pierre looks at Nicole. He looks at her. So since there's nothing in between the verb and Nicole, when we replace Nicole with la, il la regarde. La is a direct object of regarde. This is the last part of this lesson, les compléments d'objets directs au passé composé. So far we've been looking at the objects in the present tense. What about in the past tense? The sentences below are in the passé composé, which is the past tense. Note the position of the direct object pronouns in the sentences on the right. Note also the forms of the past participle. So, as-tu invité Marc? Have you invited Mark? So if you were to replace Mark with an object pronoun, right? Like in English, have you invited Mark? Yes, I've invited him. Okay, so him would be le in French, right? Because it's masculine singular. And where do we place le? We place it before the helper verb or the auxiliary verb, or avoir in this case. So, as-tu invité Marc? Oui, je l'ai invité. So remember, this for passé composé, this is a is the helper verb, and invité is the past participle. And where do we place the object pronoun? Before the helper verb, or avoir. As-tu invité Juliette? Non, je ne l'ai pas invité. So, no, I have not invited her. So where do we place in the negative passé composé sentence the direct object? We place it still before the helper verb. It just happens that in the negative, ne pas are around this cluster of the helper verb and the direct object pronoun. As-tu invité tes cousins? Same thing here. We're looking at more examples. Have you invited your cousins? Non, je ne les ai pas invités. No, I have not invited them. We put ne and pas around the helper verb, and les is placed here, squeezed in before the helper verb. And ne pas are around the auxiliary verb. And we have the past participle at the end. And here there is an additional element we have to think about, which is the agreement in gender and number of the past participle with the direct object. So when the direct object is placed before the helper verb, we have to do the agreement of the past participle with this direct object. So here, the direct object is la or L apostrophe, which refers to Juliette. So invité has to be in the feminine, so we add the E. Same thing, je ne les ai pas invités. Here, invité is the past participle of the verb inviter, of course, and it should agree with les, which is tes cousins, masculine, plural, so we add an S. Same thing, as-tu invité tes amis? Have you invited your friends? Which is feminine, plural. So les is feminine, plural, and invité, the past participle, should be feminine, plural, so we add the feminine E and the plural S. In the passé composé, the direct object pronoun comes immediately before the verb avoir. Voici Paul, here's Paul. Je l'ai invité. I invited him. In the negative form, it's still immediately before the helper verb or avoir, and it's surrounded by ne pas. In the passé composé, the past participle agrees with the direct object. If that direct object comes before the verb, compare. Let's go back to the previous slide and look how we did the agreement, okay? Here we did the agreement. Why? Because the direct object comes before the verb. Compare. Here we have direct object comes before the verb. Oui, il les a vus. So we have passé composé. We have a subject. We have a verb that has two elements, the helper verb and the past participle. When the direct object is placed before the verb, this past participle has to agree with the verb. Oui, il les a vus. And here, non, il ne l'a pas apporté. Apporté refers to guitar, feminine singular, so we add an E. But here, why is there no agreement? Because the direct object follows the verb. Marc a vu Nicole et Sylvie. And why is the direct object following the verb? Because it's the actual original object, which is not a pronoun, right? It's a noun. It's not a pronoun, le, la, les. It's Nicole and Sylvie. Marc a vu Nicole et Sylvie. So, since there is no direct object in front of the verb, we do not do the agreement here. But on this side with the agreement, yes, we do the agreement because the direct object is before the verb. Eric n'a pas apporté sa guitare. The direct object is sa guitare. And this means, by the way, Eric did not bring his guitar. Guitar here is after the past participle, so there is no agreement. But here we replaced it with la. And we placed it before the verb, so we have to do the agreement of this past participle with it. When the past participle ends in e, I, or u, the masculine and feminine forms sound the same. When the past participle ends in s or t, the feminine forms sound different from the masculine forms, like this. Mon vélo, je l'ai pris. I took it. It's masculine. Je l'ai pris. Je l'ai mis dans le garage. I put it in the garage. Ma guitare, je l'ai prise. So here we have to pronounce this S and it turns into Z because it's between two vowels. Je l'ai prise, je l'ai mise dans ma chambre. D'accord, here we come to the end of leçon 15. I know it's a little tricky. These elements of direct object pronoun, passé composé, past participle agreements are not the easiest, but please pause, go back to the beginning of the video and watch it as many times as you need to understand it. And of course, I'm always there to help you. Fill in the blanks in the lesson notes and do the accompanying activities. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.